It's My Nerd World, a Star Wars show. And on the show this week, a new High Republic live-action Disney Plus show. I have some rumors, details to share with you. John Williams is back. It's amazing that John Williams is back. The fans are really excited about it. I am too. We've got a lot of Kenobi leaks and details. So if you want to go into Kenobi spoiler-free, this is an episode that you might want to skip. I'll clarify a little further as we get into this week's episode. Also, we'll ask a couple questions. Do leaks make the fandom more toxic? Why is it, at least in my opinion, that the live-action Disney Plus shows seem to be getting a pass where the theatrical releases do not? I have a theory. Plus, we'll get into your listener feedback. Always thankful when you write into TalkShowNerd@gmail.com or leave a comment up on YouTube. Now, let's go ahead and get to this week's show.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My Nerd World.
Just let it in.
It is My Nerd World, a Star Wars show, and I am your host, Jon Justice. Glad that you have taken time out to check out the show again this week. If you are listening up on YouTube, no video this week. This is the kickoff to the NASCAR season. I am a massive NASCAR fan, and with all the racing going on this weekend, my time is short. So you're getting the audio-only version up on YouTube, but thanks for checking the show out nonetheless. If you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the show. Video will return very soon, so I hope that you would take a moment and like and subscribe up on YouTube. And thanks to everybody who checks out the show every single week. We got a lot of ground to cover, so let's not waste any more time. And first, we'll dive into a bit of news, and I'm moving these kind of out of order because I've got a lot of leaks pertaining to Kenobi and another show, but I want to start off with the first official news of the week, which is about the Obi-Wan Kenobi live-action show coming on May 25th. But according to Variety, and this actually was leaked by several different podcasts and outlets leading up to the sort of official story from Variety magazine. But more than 2 years after completing his 9th Star Wars movie, composer John Williams is returning to the Jedi fold with the theme for Obi-Wan Kenobi, Variety has learned. Williams has written the musical signature for the continuing adventures of the character played by Ewan McGregor, airing on Disney Plus, again, beginning May 25th. He recorded last week with a Los Angeles orchestra under tight security, sources say. It's a coup for both the Disney and Lucasfilm, considering the 5-time Oscar winner rarely composes for television. His last theme for a weekly dramatic series was Amazing Stories, going back to 1985. I actually remember that show. The infamous one of the landing gear from the World War II pilots really sticks out in my head. Although he has written 2 for a PBS series, Masterpiece Theater, in 2000, and Great Performances in 2009, and his news and Olympics themes written decades ago. Those continue to air on ABC. Williams' Star Wars scores, according to Variety, as we all know, are legendary. He won an Oscar for the original 1977 film and received nominations for the 5 sequels, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi in 80 and 83, followed by The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker in 2015, 2017, and 2019. And I heard another podcast, a Star Wars Underworld, make this comment, and I actually agree. It's really kind of it's kind of shocking that John Williams did not receive any nominations for the prequel films. Because to me, and to a lot of fans, I mean, Across the Stars and Duel of the Fates, some of his most iconic Star Wars work is in the prequels. I think a lot of that has to do probably with the prequels in and of themselves. There seems to be a bit of a loose connection between the popularity of films within the fandom and the Academy and the way that they vote. That's just sort of, just my subjective opinion on the matter. He also wrote the theme for Solo in a Star Wars Story, in 2018, and for Disneyland's Star Wars Galaxy's Edge theme park in 2019. He later won, the latter won him his most recent Grammy, one of 6 awarded for his Star Wars compositions over the years. Williams, who turned 90 February 8th, is remarkably busy. He's composing the scores for Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, due out in November, and for the 5th Indiana Jones movie, due next year. He will conduct the Vienna Philharmonic on March 12th through the 13th, the Philadelphia Orchestra on April 19th and 21st, and the Pittsburgh Symphony on April 25th, and the Los Angeles Philharmonic September 2nd through the 4th at the Hollywood Bowl. One more quick comment on John Williams and his work in Star Wars. I mean, nothing more needs to be said. John Williams, Star Wars, iconic, end of story. Personally, I think his work on The Rise of Skywalker is some of his best within all of Star Wars. I absolutely love that soundtrack, and I don't hear many people talk about it, but there's a couple of themes from The Rise of Skywalker that are top of the list for me in John Williams' work. But this is really exciting for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, among a lot of things that I'm going to share on the show this week. I know that it has been said in the past that I think the Force theme was originally crafted, and if I'm getting this wrong, feel free to correct me, either talkshownerd@gmail.com or leave a comment up on YouTube. But my understanding is, according to David Collins, was that the Force theme was originally supposed to be Obi-Wan Kenobi's sort of theme before it ended up taking on a much larger role in terms of the soundtrack of Star Wars. So, and again, if I'm getting the details wrong on that, I think I heard Star Wars Underworld make a comment to that. And I might be getting that wrong. So feel free to go ahead and correct me. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and move over. We have a lot more Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff to share with you. Before we do that, though, let's talk a little bit about this project that popped up. I didn't talk about it last week with the coverage of the finale of the Book of Boba Fett, but one new nugget just dropped today, so I figured, all right, we got a lot of details on a lot of leaks. Let's go ahead and include it in this week's show.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
Now, this comes from Discussing Film. There have been leaks from other sources with regard to this particular show, but Discussing Film released a story today that director Jon Watts is in talks to soon join the Star Wars universe with a new Disney series on Disney+. We have learned that Jon Watts is in talks to direct at least one episode of an upcoming mysteriously unannounced Star Wars series for Disney+, with plans to begin filming sooner than you think. The currently unannounced series is going under the working title of Grammar Rodeo, with production slated to begin this summer in Los Angeles. While, the story goes on to say, we haven't been able to gather any more concrete information on who will be writing this new project, we've heard from a handful of sources that Jon Favreau will be executive producing. Favreau, of course, is an executive producer and writer on The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett, and will soon be additionally credited as an executive producer on Ahsoka, which is at the moment in pre-production for a filming start within the next couple of months. So the details around this particular project are that it could be a High Republic series. Now, first off, if you don't know who Jon Watts is the director of Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, and Spider-Man No Way Home. So he has done some other films, but that is his most recent and most prominent work. Obviously, 3 very popular films, especially Spider-Man No Way Home, as of late. So getting Jon Watts to go and direct Star Wars is kind of a big get. The rumors that have come out about this show have been largely taken from casting calls for young actors and actresses. And apparently this is supposed to be a High Republic project. There's been some chatter that it's supposed to be It's described as sort of Stranger Things, not in as much as the content or the tone of the show, but four young friends going on an adventure, right, of similar age of what we got in Stranger Things when it first debuted several years ago. I may have talked about this on the show briefly, but I had originally assumed when I saw the working title of Grammar Rodeo that would be lending sort of credibility to this being a High Republic project, since the High Republic started off and has been a literary project, okay, with the comic books and the novels. It actually turns out that Grammar Rodeo is a reference to a Simpsons episode where Bart and his friends go on an adventure, and I believe they tell their parents that they're going to a grammar rodeo. That's the lie that they tell while they go on this adventure. So that's about all that we know about this High Republic project as of right now. Like I said, there was a casting call for for different types of actors and actresses, and that's where a lot of the details have been coming from. But obviously, there's been absolutely no announcement whatsoever coming from Disney. But it's not a surprise that we would be getting something in the High Republic era. I have not consumed any of the High Republic content yet. I plan to at some point. So, my interest in it is it's Star Wars, as usual. I know those of you that have reached out to me over High Republic content seem to really like the High Republic stuff. So, what do you think? Are you excited for this? There isn't a lot of details so far. There's talk that this could be geared more towards younger viewers, but it's Star Wars. So, you could say Stranger Things was geared towards younger viewers because it had kids to it, but it had adult themes, right? I don't think that this will be a kiddie show by any stretch, even if it is focused on young Jedi for the sake of argument, right? As always, the email is talkshownerd@gmail.com. All right, so let's get into just a ton of Obi-Wan Kenobi news. So this is where, if you don't want any spoilers at all, you're probably going to want to check out and skip forward a ton, at least for the next probably 20 minutes or so, before we get into just a bit of the topics that I want to kind of get into this week and listener feedback. So my understanding is, though, before you pitch off, my understanding is this is not a complete picture of what the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is going to be about. This is basically the impetus as to why Obi-Wan Kenobi would potentially leave Tatooine, right? I think everybody has kind of assumed that would be the case. I can't imagine. Although the fandom is already up in arms about this, and I'll talk about it later on, that there's a lot of fans out there that believe that Obi-Wan Kenobi should never leave Tatooine, and this show should be focused only on Tatooine because his whole job was to watch over Luke. And I've already seen commentary up on Twitter of people very worried that Obi-Wan's going to leave Tatooine, and that would be breaking canon. I'll talk more about this later on, but my understanding is the information I'm going to share with you, apart from casting, which seems pretty obvious on a number of these leaks, the details of the show are kind of broad and really only represent, say, the first third, the first act of the show in and of itself. So we'll start off here. Bespin Bulletin has quite a few details. Some of these are repeated as we work through these details here because there's a lot of sort of secondary confirming and reporting going on. But Jimmy Smits will reprise his role of Bail Organa in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Should not come as a surprise to anybody. Bespin Bulletin reported from Making Star Wars, revealing that Jimmy Smits has reprised the role of Bail Organa for the upcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi series. The inclusion of Bail Organa feels like a no-brainer, especially given the past leaks revealing, and here's where the big one comes in, that Leia Organa, played by Vivian Lyra Blair, will feature in the series and is rumored to be the catalyst for Obi-Wan leaving Tatooine. But nonetheless, it's exciting to get reports that Bail will be making an appearance. According to another report exclusive from StarWarsNewsNet.com, Leia Organa, as we mentioned, is set to be captured and held prisoner in the upcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi series. We've learned that the princess managed to get herself in trouble even at this young age, writes Star Wars Newsnet. From what we've heard, it appears that the princess is being held prisoner in a cantina-like establishment where we see a healthy mixture of new and familiar creatures. Of course, Obi-Wan's task will be to rescue the princess, with a young Leia's significant involvement in the series, we know that her adoptive parents will also play a role. Following the Star Wars Newsnet report, Making Star Wars reported that the Grand Inquisitor masterminds, the Grand Inquisitor masterminds the plan to abduct Leia due to Obi-Wan Kenobi's connection to Bail Organa, hoping the Jedi Master will take the bait. We've been hearing a lot that the Inquisitors are going to play a major role in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. The panicked Bail Organa travels to Tatooine and appears in Obi-Wan's cave, we'll get to more of that later, asking him for help. As you'd assume, Kenobi agrees to help Bail and travels to an unknown world described only as Space Reno via public transport. There, he meets Kumail Nanjiani's character, who most recently was in Eternals for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kumail Nanjiani's character points Obi-Wan in the direction of a spice den where the young Leia is being held captive. And some further rumors on that is apparently Kumail Nanjiani's character is one that is very memorable. I guess it is supposed to be a very well-written character, and that those that have shared the information about his character say that he's most likely going to be a fan favorite. And also, the young girl who I believe is 10 years old, I think she was in the Bird Box movie with Sandra Bullock on Netflix, apparently is great as a young Leia. And there's a very interesting and compelling dynamic between her and Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor. Leia being held prisoner, the article goes on to say, in my opinion, is a strong enough reason for Obi-Wan to finally venture from his exile of Tatooine. And hopefully it's one that fans can buy into, as I mentioned, a large section of the fan base believes that Kenobi should never venture from Tatooine, and prioritizing the safety of Luke Skywalker. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on, because one of the questions I want to raise, and I'd like to hear from you, is whether or not the leaks that we receive and the leaks that we get, if it ends up dividing the fandom further, and I'll explain more. So here is sort of an encapsulation of everything that MakingStarWars.net has put out. Includes some information I shared and also some other information. So let's break it down again. Bail Organa shows up in Obi-Wan's cave saying that Leia was abducted and asking for help. Apparently, Obi-Wan Kenobi is not in his hovel yet that we see him in A New Hope. He's actually living in a different location. Now, whether we get to the end of the show and he finds that new home when he gets back remains to be seen. But at this point in time, apparently he's living in a cave somewhere on Tatooine. Obi-Wan takes public transportation off Tatooine, like we see in the Book of Boba Fett, to a world again described as Reno if it were a Star Wars planet. And that bums me out a little bit, because as I mentioned last week, I wanted to know what kind of ship Obi-Wan Kenobi was going to have. Hopefully he will get his hands on one while he's off on his adventures. But I do dig those transports if they're talking about those same Starliners that we saw in the Book of Boba Fett. The Inquisitors have studied the Jedi's past and have an understanding of who was close to Kenobi before Order 66. The fifth brother Inquisitor, played by Sung Kang, and the third sister, Moses Ingram, try to pull Kenobi out by a trap. They capture Senator Organa's daughter and see who comes to save her. Okay. Kenobi travels to a world no one wants to go to, full of crime, scum, and villainy. Again, this is Space Reno. This is where he meets the Kumail Nanjiani character, a contact of Organa's and Kenobi's. Nanjiani's character then points him to a spice den where Leia is being held captured. A disguised Kenobi then sneaks into the spice den and rescues the 10-year-old Princess Leia. Tom O'Connell plays a fleshed-colored, black tattoo-faced Zabrak in the Spice Den. The Jedi he plays is not actually a Zabrak. Okay. They also back up the Vivian Lyra Blair. She has a lot of sassy pep, is difficult and funny. There's a same type of comedic dynamic between Moses, a prey, and the 9-year-old Addie Loggins from Paper Moon. but with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Leia. I'm not familiar with Paper Moon. I know that Jason Ward from Making StarWars.net was talking quite a bit about that. I'm not familiar with Paper Moon at all. So for those that are, apparently it's a similar dynamic between Moses and Addie in Paper Moon. The mission is what makes Kenobi's life very complicated. This and the bigger plan by the Inquisitors inform the rest of the series from here. And again, it was said a few times that this is not the entirety of the show. This is just like what gets everything going. What happens after he rescues Princess Leia, remains to be seen. Now, LMR Online also had a bit of information, which a lot of people are talking about. And they write, we've heard from our sources that Kenobi and Vader will face off not once but twice in the upcoming series. The once friends, now enemies, will have two epic battles against each other that we've been told will rank at the top of Star Wars battles. It'll be very, very interesting to see how that's handled and what the fandom reaction is to that. I don't have any issue, personally, with Kenobi and Vader facing off. I still am going with my working theory that perhaps we see a Hayden Christensen in the suit, but maybe he doesn't have the helmet on. He just has a face mask on instead. As we know, Vader can survive, right, without the helmet. He did so as they took him from Mustafar, back to Coruscant in Revenge of the Sith. I have no problem with them squaring off twice. I do wonder how much of this battle will end up relating to the battle that we see between the two of them in A New Hope. And it's funny because that New Hope, lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Vader, I mean, it really is like one of the... It's one of the most pivotal parts in the series, and yet it's the one now that comes with the most controversy, and now it's going to be even more controversial because by the standards of almost every other lightsaber battle, that battle is incredibly tame. So, will anything happen in, say, the second battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Vader, if there are indeed two? But will anything happen in these battles that will set up why that dynamic is the way that it is in A New Hope? I thought the original trilogy did a very, very good job in going from the lightsaber battle in A New Hope to the one in The Empire Strikes Back and then leading into Return of the Jedi. There seemed to be a nice progression. But even then, you compare Luke, squaring off against Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back to Darth Vader squaring off against Obi-Wan Kenobi, and, that one in The Empire Strikes Back is already much more kinetic, right, than the one that we see in A New Hope. So it'll be fascinating to see, how much of the dialogue from A New Hope that Kenobi and Vader share with one another will there be context given to in these battles in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. So what do you think? As always, leave a comment up on YouTube or drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. And with that, let's go ahead and roll into a topic here, because that covers the news and leaks for this week. But I wonder, and I'm curious to hear from you, at least from my perspective, and it's tough because you don't know how much of this goes beyond your Twitter commentary, goes beyond Reddit. This is where I pull information. This is where I see the exchanges taking place. I can't imagine, apart from like podcasts, for the casual fans really caring all this much. But then again, the casual fans aren't seeing the leaks like we are. What I'm talking about is, do leaks divide the fandom? People knowing and judging before seeing. I don't mind receiving leaks. I think they're fun, especially for the really, really big films, I will say that I wished that I had gone into The Rise of Skywalker a little bit. I wish I'd known less going into The Rise of Skywalker. My take on it's always been, if you haven't heard me say it before, is that, really all the leaks do is affect that first viewing of the film, right? Because once you see the film one time, you already know what happens. So which is it that you want? Do you want to have fun reading the leaks and speculating on what the leaks present and talking about it and sharing it and talking with people online? Or do you want to keep yourself completely in the dark to have that one-time experience in the theater? And, I think it's up to every person, and it depends on the project too. If there is a project that I'm not nearly as interested in coming from the creative talent at Disney and Lucasfilm, then I'll probably keep myself in the dark. I know that may sound weird. Why wouldn't you go the other way? But if it's a project that I'm not all that interested in, then I'm not really interested in seeing the leaks. And I'm like, all right, well, if I'm not interested in it, let's just go in with completely fresh eyes. But if it's a project that I'm really, really hyped for and interested in, then the lead up and talking about the leaks and rumors, that's a lot of fun. And I'm willing to sacrifice that first viewing to have all that fun of talking about the leaks and speculating beforehand. But I can't help but wonder if the leaks go and divide the fandom, because people then immediately begin to form their own headcanon over what it is that they're supposed to see before they even see it. So my point is, this LMR Online story of Kenobi and Vader facing off not once but twice, just reading the Reddit thread, there was a ton of controversy surrounding that. We already have people that are complaining now, knowing the leaks of that I just shared, of potentially Obi-Wan Kenobi leaving, Tatooine. And I think everybody kind of assumed that, but there is a portion of the fandom that thinks that shouldn't happen and have already made up their mind that it's going to suck if he leaves without seeing the finished product. I think if it were up to Disney and Lucasfilm, they would rather not have any leaks out there at all. But it just seems like, these leaks end up dividing the fandom. But then again, it may not even matter, because by the time a lot of this stuff comes out, the fans get divided anyhow. So I'm curious what you think, though. Do you think the leaks divide the fandom? People knowing and judging before they see. Drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. All right, a couple more things here, and then we'll dive into listener feedback. Flying through the content this week, by the way. Moving forward, expect all the Disney Plus material, for the most part, all the Disney Plus Star Wars content to intersect. To where you won't be able to watch one without needing to watch the others for context. I heard some commentary on the Ringerverse podcast. I think it was House of R. Is that what they call it? House of H? They called it the Marvelizing of Star Wars content. And that is, what we saw with the Book of Boba Fett, where you have the intersecting stories and characters coming in within the timeline. Now, I think it'll be different, right, when it comes to Obi-Wan Kenobi. You don't necessarily need to be watching, say, Bad Batch to watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, but maybe they will do it with Andor. Andor is next up later this year, right? We don't know exactly when it's going to drop. After Obi-Wan Kenobi. Next up after Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, I imagine since we're playing in that time between episode 3 and 4, that potentially we could have some characters that drop into the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that will be sort of laying the seeds for the Andor series coming up later in the year. But the speculation was surrounding that from moving forward, Star Wars and Lucasfilm and Disney Plus's attempt to do what they did with the Marvel Cinematic Universe in live action is going to be this Marvelizing of Star Wars content, where you won't be able to watch one without needing to watch the others for the particular context. And I think more specifically, if you want a specific example, Ahsoka showing up in that one chapter of Book of Boba Fett, where he goes to give Grogu the chainmail. We don't get any context for why Ahsoka's there, and I'm convinced that when we see the Ahsoka show, we're going to know exactly why she was there. We'll see it from the other perspective. And I messed up last week too. Somebody had asked what was up next, and I assumed that it was Obi-Wan Kenobi May 25th, but apparently we're supposed to get the Bad Batch series before we get the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. So at least that's what I think Star Wars Underworld was saying, is that the Bad Batch Season 2 is supposed to drop on Disney Plus before we get Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I would imagine that we would be getting some Bad Batch info, release date, and trailer very soon, because Obi-Wan Kenobi is not that far off. All right, one more quick topic comment that I wanted to make, and this popped into my head while I was watching Attack of the Clones the other day. And, watching the prequels as of late, it was interesting to me because, look, I enjoyed Book of Boba Fett, and I've given my commentary on it. I didn't think it was groundbreaking. I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as The Mandalorian, but, I enjoyed it well enough. It had its ups and downs more so than The Mandalorian did. But what's interesting to me is that while I'm watching Attack of the Clones, which is arguably at the moment one of the least popular Star Wars films, depending on who you ask, right? Certainly, I'd say it's easy to say that it's the least popular prequel at the moment. I think The Phantom Menace had that mantle for a while, but people seem to have grown fonder of that particular film. But watching the prequels, look, they are just as good and mind-blowing as the Disney Plus content. We're just interpreting it differently. And what I mean by that is, Lucas gave us a ton of, wow moments in Attack of the Clones. But the movie gets bogged down kind of the same way that The Phantom Menace did, right? And The Phantom Menace did the same thing. The Phantom Menace got bogged down because of Jar Jar Binks. And Attack of the Clones gets bogged down because of the dialogue, for the most part, between Anakin and Padme, right? I was talking with Andrew, the guy that I do my weekly show with on Twin Cities News Talk here in Twin Cities in Minneapolis, and he had watched Attack of the Clones recently, and I was presenting him this theory that I'm laying out now, and he had said what I just said, and he said that, but the problem is that just the dialogue between Anakin and Padme is so bad. I'm like, hey, it is what it is. Lucas was going for a 20s and 30s vibe with those films. Very similar to what he was trying to do with the original Star Wars series, where he was riffing off of the Saturday morning serials that he was used to seeing, your Buck Rogers, your Flash Gordon. When he did the prequels, he was going for, again, an even older vibe in terms of the dialogue. It just didn't translate nearly as well. It doesn't bother me anymore. But I understand, and the criticism is valid, where it stands. But what's interesting to me is those films don't get cut the slack the live action shows do. And for example, with the Book of Boba Fett, listening to the commentary and the podcasts around it, and even what I did on this very show, it's very segmented. You watch one episode, but you always have another episode coming up. And if the next episode is better and meets your expectations and you subjectively enjoy it more than the other one, then you move on and you're happy with it again. Whereas a film gets judged as a whole. Like, I'm sitting back and I'm watching Attack of the Clones and I go, man, there's so much rad stuff in this movie. I mean, just from beginning to end, this thing is just chock full of fantastic Star Wars content. And yet, it still gets dogged by a lot of the fans. And if it were broken up into a series today, if you took Attack of the Clones, never been released before, made it into a live-action Disney Plus series and broke it up over 6 episodes, I think it would be more well-received. Same thing with The Rise of Skywalker. You would get your oohs and your ahs, and I think that it would be interpreted much differently than the way the live-action shows are. I think the live-action content really does seem to get a lot more slack, the live-action streaming content than the movies do. And I don't think there's any changing that. I think it's just the dynamic of watching episodic Star Wars. And you could probably apply this to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well, although the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, I think, are more roundly well-received than certainly the sequels were. There's not nearly as much controversy around those films than there is around the sequels. I just thought it was fascinating. It's irrelevant. The prequels are out, they're films, it doesn't matter. The sequels are out, they're films, it doesn't matter. I just was, wondering if you change the dynamics and the prequels were split up, or even the sequels were split up into live action content, if they would be much better received. If the choices made in if the choices in The Rise of Skywalker, the choices that were made in The Rise of Skywalker would be more well received had they split it up over, a live action show. But again, that didn't happen. They were movies. They were part of a trilogy. So it's kind of irrelevant. I just thought it was just an interesting little commentary and observation, because there's just a lot of really rad stuff in The Rise of Skywalker. There's a lot of rad stuff in Attack of the Clones. And unfortunately, those movies, they don't get the automatic reset. The TV shows are given an automatic reset from the previous episode, where the films, generally speaking, they're not. What do you think? Am I just rambling? You're welcome to email me and tell me that. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Thank you to everybody who wrote over the past week to my Nerd World, and time to go through your listener feedback. First one comes from a friend of the show. You're all friends of the show. Miranda Alicia, who writes this. This is an awesome time to be a Star Wars fan. And that's it. Probably the shortest email that I've ever received from Miranda. Thank you, Miranda. Obviously, Subdued writes, it's nice to see your face again. Very nice backdrops as well. Thank you, obviously. Sorry you didn't get a video this week, but there's a lot of racing on, and I didn't have time. SheVP, friend of the show, said this. I thought the episode, speaking of Book and Boba Fett, was a lot of fun. I did, however, think the choice to place Din and Grogu's reunion in the middle of an action scene was odd. I agree with you. The emotional weight of that scene just wasn't able to be fulfilled in that setting, in my opinion. I agree with that as well. But I'm happy that they are back together. Overall, the episode felt like a live-action cartoon. My husband said, yes, all of Star Wars is a live-action cartoon. He's not really a fan. Anyway, great show as usual, John. Thank you, SheVP. I appreciate that. J.O.B. writes this. Putting the pieces together with the rumor of the new Jedi Order accepting attachment, Luke making Grogu choose between the Jedi way of unattachment, and Luke in a TLJ being so angry at Yoda, Obi-Wan, and the old ways of the Jedi. When Ben turned to the dark side, Luke realized he made the wrong decision to go with the old ways. When Luke sat across from Grogu, they were both making a decision, and Luke picked the wrong one. Grogu is the future of the Jedi Order, and he will train with Rey. As Luke said, a short time for Grogu is a lifetime for someone else. And J.O.B., that would be absolutely amazing to see. I think it's a given, right? And this is not a hot take. This is a given. Grogu is being set up for much, much greater things. He is going to be, the Yoda of a next generation beyond the sequel trilogy. And to bring Grogu, an older Grogu, to Rey in a series or a movie, I think would be absolutely incredible. But I'm dying for post The Rise of Skywalker content, just because I love that movie so much. Mike Rotunda writes this. I can't wait to see Obi-Wan. I saw The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. I was 7 years old. My dad never took me to the movies before that, and never took me again. Wow. I remember seeing and hearing sounds that I've never heard before. That lightsaber in the theater to a young boy was mesmerizing. I have complained about Disney for a while now, but I have to give them credit now. I think they're finally getting it with Star Wars. To me, this is the best Star Wars content since 1983 Return of the Jedi. I love the Jedi lore of Star Wars. I'm excited for what is ahead of us as Star Wars fans. I don't mind it being on TV instead of the theater, as long as they're putting out quality content. I don't care what it's on. Thank you, friend of the show, Mike Rotunda. I appreciate that email, and it's probably one of my favorite responses you've ever sent to the show. Thank you very much. All right, let's see. Xanin Enterprises writes this. Just listened to you for the first time since you left us, abandoned us in Tucson. So I've been now in Minneapolis for over 5 years. Before that, I was in Tucson, Arizona, doing a radio show for 9 years. Still have a lot of people that follow me on Facebook from my time in Tucson. And a lot of people don't understand that whole situation. That station was going under. I think a lot of people realize it now, but the station that I worked for, 104.1, I knew its days were numbered. And going to Minneapolis was obviously a bigger move to a much, much bigger market in and of itself. But One of the big reasons why I left was because 104.1 was not going to be around, and it wasn't around. It didn't last much longer after I left. So, the term sinking ship, I think, and I got a lifeboat, thankfully, to a better market. So that's why I left. Anyway, it's great to hear your voice again. Thank you. The family just has both loved Mando and the Book of Boba Fett. It was really interesting to hear your take on the episode and series. Now I have to go back and watch all the episodes and listen to your reviews. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Zanin Enterprises. And with that, that's it for this week. Holy cow, I expected this to be a much longer show, but I got it in just over 40 minutes, so look at that. Before I let you go, again, if you want to support my Nerd World and you haven't done it already, go and check out my science fiction space opera series. Book 6, Fear the Dangerous Night, is now available in audiobook, finally available in audiobook. So the entire series so far of the 6 books is available in ebook, paperback, hardcover, and audiobook, all at Amazon.com. Search for EMBARK. Jon, Jon Justice, and you will find the entire series. You can pick up book 1 in ebook for 99 cents. You can also pick up book 4 in ebook at 99 cents. Book 4 is it's a side story that is in the timeline that leads into the next trilogy, which starts with The Rocket Queen, book 5, Fear the Dangerous Night, book 6, and will end with Battle Planet, which I finished writing and is currently being edited. So you can also get the first 3 books, which tell a complete story. It's a trilogy. Embark Book 1, Treasure in Darkness Book 2, and The Vanishing War Book 3. You can get those in ebook at a discounted price of $3.99. So for those that aren't familiar with the story, this is a space opera adventure. It's geared for adults, but can be read by all ages. And the brief synopsis for book 1 is as follows. The stars are within reach. Interstellar travel is now possible with global corporations D Corp and Enercon providing spaceflight to all humanity. But when an industrial accident inside D Corp sets off a catastrophic chain of events threatening all of Earth, the global evacuation begins. Amid the growing chaos, Taft Guardia, Keith Amaro, and a ragtag squadron of pilots discover a mysterious device. As the ruthless Synargum of D Corp, with an armada of starships at his disposal, attempts to exploit the disaster, Taft and Keitha realize that they alone hold the key to saving humanity from the tyranny of D Corp's evil leader. If you go to Amazon.com, by the way, you'll get a more detailed description than what I just read. That's really a broad overview of the story. So head on over to Amazon.com, search for Embark, Jon Jon Justice, or you can go to mynerdworld.net and hit the links right there on the homepage. That wraps up My Nerd World, a Star Wars show for this week. Thank you so much for checking the show out. I really do appreciate it. I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. Rooting for Alex Bowman this weekend in the Daytona 500, and I will talk to you next week. Go Bowman. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.